Shinji and Warhammer40k, Chapter 13, The Dance of Fate, Part 2. Kozo Fuyutsuki felt old. Every passing day started slower, and every moment just that little bit harder than the last. This was the essential pain of the human condition. Everyone and everything dies. From the very first moment a baby opens its mouth to scream and breathe, it begins its unstoppable descent into death. He put his hands on the desk, in plain view. He wasn't Gendo. These people all knew it, and which was why some of them still looked mullish and defiant. He frowned. These children, so young, so full of life. Never did he feel so old as to when he had to scold some sense back into his students. He sighed in obvious disappointment. "Tell me, what is your purpose here?" He waited for an answer, and as he expected, it was Asuka who spoke first. "To pilot the Evangelion," she said without hesitation. Though the scolding was in full view of everyone in the command centre, she had no fear. He then turned to the other two pilots. They looked more suitably cowed. "To fight the enemies of humanity," they said at the same time. Fuyutsuki nodded. He turned to Maya and gestured for her to repeat the report. She coughed into her fist and began to read. "At 1000 hours, 58 minutes and 15 seconds today, Unit 1 was attacked by one of the targets separated into two, say, Target A, and sank into place 2 kilometres from Suagawan Bay. 10:58 and 20 seconds, Unit 2 stopped action after the attack by the other pilot target, say B." Both Evangelion pilots twitched at the sight of their Evangelions. Both had their feet up in the air, Unit 1 out of the water and Unit 2 planted into the ground. "Nerve gave up to carry out the operation at 11 a.m. The right of orders were given to UN Second Force. At 11, the targets were attacked by an N2 bomb and rendered motionless. A strong AT field prevents any further attempts, while the Angels are regenerating the 22% of their structure that was lost." Fuyutsuki flipped up a local newspaper. He, too, began to read. "Stunning defeat. The Evangelions proved remarkably useless and had to be bailed out by the UN forces. Even Shinji Ikari showed disappointing performance, moving mostly to keep the other pilot from getting her full self killed. The next attack is only a matter of time, and it's to wonder if we could survive a repeat of this disaster." "It's his fault!" Asuka shouted and pointed at Shinji. "It's due to him that my debut battle was made such a farce. He intentionally damaged my operations with his lack of restraint." "What? You were the one who was reckless," Shinji had to reply. "I did as you said, until you charged in and bit off more than you could chew." "Don't be rude! I told you not to interfere, and now you cost me my victory!" The Vice Commander sighed and rubbed at his temples. "Pilot, sir, are you now presenting a formal complaint?" The girl looked confused. Fuyutsuki leaned forward, and his posture was still without menace. However, it was very uncompromising. "Intentionally sabotaging the actions of an ally in battle. It is a serious charge. The Evangelions are not mere war machines. They are the trust of nations. We are fighting for the survival of humanity. And for him to be playing such personal grudges in the middle of combat, why, that's treason." He leaned forward and tapped at the smooth metal surface of the commander's desk. "This cannot be tolerated." He nodded. "Will you stand as witness in the tribunal? Do you intend to file a formal complaint?" Asuka looked wide-eyed back at the stern but still paternalistic vice commander. He looked genuinely believing. Behind the pilots, Misato and Ritsuko both smirked. "Nice one, old man." Though directed against Shinji, it turned most effectively Asuka's own words against herself. The red-haired girl dropped her pointing arm and shook her head. "Good, because we have very little time to waste on such matters." Misato raised her hand. The Vice Commander recognised her request to speak. "Go ahead, Captain Katsuragi." "Shinji, you requested a full retreat just 2 minutes into the battle. By your own words, you said, 'This is an enemy that the Evangelions can't beat.' Why?" In response, he merely turned towards the screen showing the regenerating angels. "The N2 mine worked, Misato-san. Yet we know that previous angels had AT fields strong enough to withstand them, while the Evangelion's own AT fields could barely even break through the enemies." The Angels are using the same AT field patterns as the Evangelions, Ritsuko put in. It didn't matter what we could do. These things, they're built to directly attack the weaknesses of the Evangelion. As a consequence, its AT field is weaker against conventional weapons, but it can erode ours very quickly. The chaotic pattern field system Ritsuko-sensei put in could only hold them back for a moment. He shook his head. I'm sorry. There really was no way to win. Asuka drew back in exaggerated shock. What worthless pessimism! You dare call yourself an Evangelion pilot? What happened to your epic drive to win at all costs, Shinji-sama? So this, in the end, the famed third child shows himself as nothing more than a frightened little boy. There is a time for courage, Ray spoke plainly. There is also a time for strategy. Had you pulled back as Pilot Takari suggested, the N2 mine could have been dropped as a tactical experiment, and further options be explored from there. I won't take for that from someone whose only act in battle was to shoot at me! Asuka snarled back. I was not aiming for you, Pilot Tsuyu. If I did, you would be dead. That's it! You've pissed me off enough already! Asuka stomped a foot forward. Ray merely tilted her head a bit, as close to come get some as she could show within nerve. Kozo Fuyuki slammed his open palm onto the desk, drawing everyone's attention. He was standing up and looked nearly about to lose it himself. Enough! If you must bicker, do it somewhere else. This is not a playground for your children. There were muffled snickers from indistinct personnel. He turned to Ritsuko. Dr. Akagi, did we learn anything at all from the Angel? She changed the main display to show Israfel in both combined and separated forms. This Angel seems to combine a mastery of the AT field with excellent close combat capabilities. It also possesses all the abilities of the third Angel. She changed the view into a genetic pattern. While I do not believe cleaving the Angel again will make more smaller enemies, it's not a recommended form of attack. How long until it wakes up again? Estimate to put it at around 6 days, 14 hours, sir. Can't we just bomb it again when its field goes down? Misato asked. Ritsuko shook her head. Look here. This is the edge of its AT field. Notice how plants are starting to wither inside its territory. It's noticeably darker within. This is a very strong AT field when the Angels combine. They'd be prepared for such another attack when they're ready to continue theirs. Shinji raised his hand. Yes, Pilot Akari? Could we send all 3 Evangelions to try and break a hole through its AT field, so you can just send another N2 mine in? If that doesn't kill it, it might buy us some more time. Misato beamed. That's an excellent idea, Shinji, she said, then turned to Ritsuko. Can we? The scientist shrugged. The Evangelions are severely damaged. However, we may try by tomorrow, if the control systems are put back as first priority. The problem with that is if it wakes the enemy. We don't have any idea yet on how to beat them. Misato bit her lip and considered. No, too much for a risk with damaged Evangelions. We'll just have to see if we can do anything within 6 days. She turned to the pilots. We have a more fundamental problem. You 3, if we're going to defeat the Angels, then you're just going to have to learn how to work together. What? With this slow boy? Impossible! Understood, Katsuragi-san, Shinji and Ray said again at the same time. Asuka seethed. It was supposed to be her moment. No one else in the entry plug with her, no one else to muddy up her concentration, no one else to steal the glory of victory. The 2 Evangelions launched off the aerial Ava carriers and landed on the beach. Already there were rating power supply lines. Listen to me! Don't do anything to disturb me! She said to the other Ava. This is a direct order from your team leader! All right, Asuka-san, Shinji replied. Understood, from Ray, already on a sniper's position on a nearby mountain. It's here, said Misato from a mobile command relay. They all saw the breakwater of Israfel's speedy approach. The Angel stood up from the sea and stood there just watching. Asuka rushed ahead, saying, It's too unfair to attack 2 on 1! Hefting her progressive spear up, she leapt from standing structures out to the deeper waters and cleaved the Angel in 2 with one cut. There! Asuka crowed. Battle should be quick, clean and efficient. Impressive, Soyu-san, whistled Shinji. Then, "Watch out!" Eh? The two halves of Israfel bulged out, and like shedding skin turned into two distinct angels. Avian bone masks slid out and their cores glowed as their abilities all went active. From them came a strange sound, like the scratching of many insects' feet upon paper. "Asuka!" Shinji shouted. "Stay back!" she countered, now grinning. "I can handle this!" She yelled out as she swung again, heaving her spear. The blade cut deep into one angel, but not enough to reach its core. It merely healed around her spear, fixing it into its own body. With a slight turn, Asuka found her weapon ripped free from her Ava's hands. The other angel, henceforth dubbed Angel Beta, receded its bone face to reveal its other freehold face. It flashed, and Asuka screamed as her Ava was sent flying back to shore upon a shard of burning yellow energy. Unit 2 carved a deep furrow into the ground. It lay still. "Asuka!" Shinji shouted again. Unit 2 rolled over to its back and got up again. "Don't interfere!" Asuka replied. "You don't even have a weapon," he said in a reasonable tone. Asuka was not limited by reason. Her progressive knives deployed and she flipped her hold on them. She charged once more at the twin angels slowly floating to shore. Israfel Alpha put itself in front, as Asuka arrived, embraced Unit 2, heedless of the damage to its own body. Israfel Beta leapt up and over them, and upon landing turned to rake its claws against the Red Ava's back. Its power cord split, its armour showed deep gashes, and Asuka screamed into the open channel. Principio Eternus roared. Abruptly, the angels let go of the Evangelion, letting it fall to the sea. They moved at high speed towards the shore. Shinji let free with his bolter. The burst bounced off an AT field. He ejected the clip, slapped in a fresh one and unleashed his own AT field. Their fields met, crackling, and suddenly they were through. Shinji barely had time to duck, as their claws would have bisected his Ava from waist up. He raised his field again, just in time as their beams converged upon him. As the smoke cleared, again the angels attacked in unison. Again his AT field failed to stop the lunge. The Evangelion's left shoulder took a serious hit, ruining all the armour. Shinji grimaced as 3 small furrows appeared on his plug suit. "Don't ignore me!" he heard someone yell. From behind the twin angels, Unit 2 leapt high with its prog knife held to stab. Israfel Beta whipped itself around upon an invisible fulcrum on its AT field and swing-kicked towards the Red Ava's exposed side. Unit 2 was smashed down to the ground. "Asuka!" Shinji shouted for the 3rd time. "Damn it! Asuka, can you hear me? Are you alright?" Principio Eternus hunched and dashed forward. It ducked under another swing, and aiming backwards with the bolter even as it ran past, sent a burst into Israfel Alpha's back. The angel gave out a scream as the rounds penetrated its body, then exploded inside, shredding whatever internal organs it had. "Adapted dat," Shinji said aside. The purple Ava went over to the red one and helped it back to its feet. "Suyu-san, they're too strong to attack alone." "Don't you dare!" She forcefully shoved him back. The 2 Evangelions fell away from each other as a cross-shaped beam broke apart the ground between them. Behind Israfel Beta, Israfel Alpha was still writhing, but its strange black flesh was bulging out in rapid, cancerous healing. "Ray!" Shinji shouted. A bright lance of energy shot forth from the mountain behind them, unerringly aimed at Israfel Alpha's core. The positron beam neared the core and curved towards the other angel. Then from between the 2 angels deflected out towards Evangelion Unit 2. Asuka screamed in pain, collapsing again. "No," Shinji breathed out. They're learned! Both angels brought their 3 eye-hole faces towards the mountain and began bombarding it with beams. Unit 0 had no choice but to fall back. "We can't win this!" Shinji shouted out. "This is an enemy the Evangelions can't beat. Asuka, we must withdraw!" "What a raid, I'll kill you myself!" she shouted back. She charged again, with just her fists to kill with if she had to. She screamed again as 2 beams just barely missed her, sending her Ava stumbling. "Misato-san, I need the ships to give us a full shelling at our location," Shinji just said instead. "Please!" The Navy began to give the Angels everything they had. Battleships pounded at the shore and missiles burned at everything. It was a smoke-filled hell. Unit 2 was on Unit 1's shoulders. LCL was leaking out of a hole on its side. The purple Ava didn't look much better, as its left shoulder lay bare to the air. Shinji had his bolter pointed at the field full of acrid smoke. He dared extend his AT field. Yellow darts of energy broke out of concealment. It hit a cliffside somewhere to the left. By pushing at something, apparently he was concentrating an AT field at that location. That boulder seemed to have a defensive AT field. The purple Evangelion began running in the opposite direction, with the red one on it in a piggyback carry. "Let me go!" Asuka screamed. "You coward! You filth! Don't you dare run away from this! I order you to let me go! I order you!" "Sorry, Soyu-san. Can't do that." The Evangelion slammed and rebounded off a wall of hard air. As they fell, Shinji's eyes widened. It was exactly the same as... His eyes widened further as he saw two specks in the sky. Rapidly growing bigger, the Angels were dropping onto them, claws outstretched as death from above. He had no choice but to fling Unit 2 aside as he readied his own defence. The two Angels landed between the Evangelions that had just barely got back up to their feet. Flash! Flash! Unit 1 flew, having raised its own AT field, but those of his enemies merely opposed his, sending him out to sea. Shinji's field failed under a steady, Ramiel-like beam, and his chest armour cracked. It was a massive splash that nearly overturned the nearby cruiser. Unit 2 spun in midair, engulfed by the beam. Strangely enough, its power was less than that sent against the other Ava, in some form of cruel parity. It burned a crater into the ground ahead of the Evangelion, and buried Asuka headfirst into it. Both pilots saw red. Their Ava's power remaining ticked slowly down from 3, 2, 1, 0. Darkness. Misato stared at the heaps of official documents on her desk. "Strange," she mused out loud. "I expected there to be more." Ritsuko laughed lightly. "The battle was from outside the city. No matter the outcome, at least the people are happy they still have their property. We still have to deal with all the military damages, though. The UN's invoice and the request forms." Misato sat down and clutched at her head. "I don't need to read them. I already know what they say." She groaned. "If you must fight a battle, do it there instead of here." 6 days. The scientist took a sip of her own mug of coffee. "That's enough time to have our defences prepared. Enough time to get the Evangelions prepared. Now the question is, can you have the pilots ready?" "I don't know. Can we have Evangelion Unit 0 fighting in the next battle?" Ritsuko shook her head. "The control problems of Unit 0 go beyond mere hardware and software. It was never meant for actual combat. Its central control system is actually linked to a virtual copy of the Magi. We're waiting for the delivery of parts to create, well, an entirely new head for Unit 0. "Nerve China behind schedule again?" Ritsuko nodded. "Can't be helped. We must make do with what we have." "Shinji and Asuka." Misato leaned back and put her feet up onto her desk. "What a problem." "Would you classify Shinji as a dominant or submissive personality?" The Nerve Operations Director shrugged. "It follows orders. Shin-chan's best at being allowed to improvise, though. Asuka's just the sort to ask for enough rope to hang herself. Yours may be the most difficult task in the week ahead. I don't envy you, Misato." Ritsuko chuckled. "It might be good news within bad news that Commander Ikari isn't here. If he saw this, you might have been fired instantly. And then you wouldn't need to deal with it." "I don't like the thought of being replaced so easily," Misato pondered on, oblivious to how her choice of words made her friend wince. "Shinji and Asuka, they both may be thinking they're made to replace each other. Instead of using it up against each other, how can we combine that strength?" Ritsuko nursed the rising migraine. "Maya's getting to me." "If we had 4 pilots, this wouldn't be such a problem." "A sync ratio in the 150s range just might be fast enough to match the chaotic field shift of the enemy Angels. Enough that the pilots can choose when to neutralize the enemy AT field, and enough to outmaneuver simultaneous attacks. Misato shrugged. But like you said, we need to make do with what we have. She smiled cutely. Please, Ritz-chan, do you have anything that'll keep me from getting fired? The scientist leaned on the stack of papers and held out a disc. Now what would you do without me, Misato? In the end, I always end up taking care of your problems. Oh, how good it is to have a kind old friend! Ritsuko smirked. Unfortunately, I can't take credit. Help in this pinch of a situation comes from Kaji-kun. Misato blinked. Kaji? She took the disc and shoved some of the paper piles so she could open up her own workstation. She put the disc in. Wonder filled her face as she watched the data in it. Hey, Ritz-chan, who does Kaji work for? Why are you asking me? You already know he's the UN attaché. Have you seen this? I don't believe Kaji could have put this all together in just one night. She looked up and opened up her right hand in front of her face. This plan just knows too much about the AT field. She began ticking off from her fingers. 1. You may push or pull with an AT field. 2. You may use an AT field to deflect. 3. You may use an AT field in a crude sense. 4. You may project an AT field a distance away, but you'll need to remain motionless while doing it. 5. You may give an AT field an edge. It's great. It's a simultaneous attack on the angel timed to music. It's good. It's too good. It makes me suspicious. Ritsuko looked non-committal. We did send out simultaneous data to the JSSDF. I think it's only natural they'd have some plan against whatever tricks the Ava could pull. She finished off her coffee. And he is Asuka's guardian. Surely he would have known about what an Ava could do. But a lot of this we knew about only from the angel attacks on Tokyo 3. Not even Shinji makes it a habit of using the AT field this way. It's like the enemy, only in the form of an Evangelion. Ritsuko turned away. Moving about her own brilliance, people tend to dismiss Misato as dim. However, her old friend possessed her own brand of keen intellect. Do we have a choice? She asked. It's what we have. Misato licked her lips. Maybe. There's still someone I haven't asked. His room was smaller now, but Shinji didn't mind. Of course, Misato protested that he didn't have to give up his own room to the newcomer, but he preferred it so. A storeroom emptied out could serve as a small bedroom, and he had much less stuff than Asuka. There was also that the storeroom didn't have a window. That made it all the more attractive to him, ensuring him another layer of security from monitoring it. Inside it, he sat facing his 3 figurines, mulling over his recent defeat. We learn more from our defeats than from our victories, said the Farseer. And well indeed do the Eldar deserve their wisdom, the Chaos Marine sneered. You do not have to tolerate her incompetence, Bright Lord. She is a risk to your plans. And what would you have me do? Asuka is trying her utmost. I can't fault her for that. Her lack of discipline has been her downfall, answered the Space Marine. Such anger may lead her to chaos. You may think she serves corn with her flailing about, but that girl, her fears, her sweet pain, she is Slaneshi to the core. Loud music blared from Asuka's room, all to hide her sobbing. The girl felt so alone. What made it worse was that she knew there was no one she could really blame but herself for her failure. She feared being sent away as useless. For too long had she made Ava the centre of her existence, and a fail in the only thing that supposedly tied her to the world cut very deep into her sense of identity. I need to help her, said Shinji. Do you? Do you really? Chaos answered. Do you even need her at all? Of course. She's an Evangelion pilot like me. She needs this like me. Never have I seen someone live so much just for the fight. To Rei, purpose was reason in being. But Asuka, she's defined by her struggle. She suffers from the constant affliction of you, monkey, a vague idea of goals. She seeks to be the best, but until you, my young king, she has never found anyone to really measure herself against. The value of being the greatest fades if there is no one else to confirm this. To win by default is to lose victory. Asuka believes in nothing but herself, Shinji sighed, and that's why her pool of faith may empty itself. She won't reach beyond her limits, not until her faith can be shared. One cannot give faith, Commander. One earns it. I don't know how to help her. Asuka was so human, in all the human failings and all the human desires. Shinji wouldn't be able to respect himself if he failed to help such an exemplification of his own very goal. Then perhaps you need to ask someone who can, continued the Space Marine. If she is indeed needed for humanity's victory, at the very least our duty is to aid her in finding the pure source of her will. Forget the pure, counselled the Chaos Marine. It would be far easier to find the root of her insecurities and pull upon it. The other pilot serves you well and true. Why not have two? The Farseer then began to giggle to herself. Warp energy seemed to spark from all around her as she weaved through a maze of eventualities. Emperor, protect us. Flee now, Bright Lord. Flee while you still can. Hey, everyone! I'm home, said Misato from the door. I have a plan! It was a day and a morning after the Battle of Israfel. Toji and Kensuke followed behind Akari as they went up to the pilot's apartment. It was clear beforehand that Asuka was living with Shinji, and with mass media trumpeting their defeat, the other teens knew their absence had something to do with the Evangelion somehow. Strange, said Toji. You know, it's like this entire floor of the building doesn't have anyone other than Misato-san living in it. Nerve security. They're just throwing money around, replied Kensuke. Now that he was actually earning his money, he could appreciate his father's concern with making the numbers work out. Waste was the enemy. They relocated everyone here, even just to limit whatever excuses people could give in going up to where the pilots live. Class rep, did you notice anyone? No, but there. She pointed aside while walking. There were several wall-mounted cameras. If anyone other than us, even food delivery, tried to get up to this floor, I think they'd be stopped and searched. Kensuke sighed. It's not always fun and games to be an Eva pilot. They reached the door. Hikari rang the doorbell. It opened, and from the edge, two faces shyly went to see. Toji and Kensuke reared back. You're in that paired look again, they said with a grimace. The two Ava pilots were in unisex clothing, with a red sleeveless vest over black silk pants. Overall, it looked less girly on Hikari than tight black shorts and a short shirt, but it was still disturbing. Hikari turned around, punched them both in the head before they could say anything further, and then went back to the door. She smiled sweetly. So, is this necessary? Thanks, class rep, said the two boys. Asuka whistled appreciatively. It's not our fault, the two pilots said at once. They're making us do this. We need to function together. We even have to eat together, wash together, sleep together. And I wonder if they're trying to ensure the next generation who can activate the Avas. Hikari mused further. You misunderstand, added the two. Hikari, what about Ayanami? Kensuke asked. A blue-haired head likewise pointed into view. I am here as well. She was dressed in normal clothes, in her school white shirt and shorts borrowed from Maya. Her hair looked slightly mussed. God damn you, Hikari! The two boys shouted at once. What's the commotion over there? A voice recognisable as Maya's piped out from inside the apartment. Let's not waste time. Misato-senpai's ready for you now. Kensuke just fell over unconscious. Toji managed to restrain himself due to a certain peeved glance from Hikari. The students laughed. You should have told us from the very beginning, said Hikari. She had Pen on her lap and rubbed at his tummy. Incredibly, the penguin seemed to be purring. He seemed to instinctively recognise her as another provider of good food. So this is your idea, Ibuki-san? Asked Kensuke. Maya took a calming draught of tea. I merely modified the plan someone sent out to Misato-senpai. Fighting time to music was a good way to force synchronization, but a basic rule of warfare is that no plan ever survives contact with the enemy.
So, martial arts? Toji asked further.
Something like that, she continued. The critical portion of the plan is more mental than physical. I can just see it. Backflip, then ram! Then you smack headfirst into an AT field wall. Ritsuko-senpai and I have designed a crash course to rapidly enhance their movements and sync ratio. They need to match or repulse an enemy's AT field without even needing to think about it.
Everyone looked at the Ava pilots, wired up and moving according to the images on the projector screen. Coloured dots on a pad on the floor and arrows on the screen were indicators of where and how they should move. I noticed Rei isn't wired. Is she in on it? Asked Kensuke.
Evangelion Unit 0 is unable to battle. However, Rei should benefit from this too. We usually host a control group to check if it's the practice or the synchronized living that increases sync ratio.
Maya took another sip.
The original plan called for a pressure pad and a colour pattern. Please, I have the Magi, and motion capture's been around since the last century.
Misato slapped the table and laughed.
All these unused apartments might as well be good for something.
She gestured around the empty space.
Maya-chan and Rei-chan are moving into the next apartment until this thing's over. I must say, it's nice to have neighbours you can talk to. It can't be permanent, Misato-senpai. We still have many things to do in our former residences. Brip, brip, brip. Yeah!
Asuka tore off her contact leads.
I can't work with this fool. He's slowing me down.
That is the whole point, Pilot Soryu, Rei said, continuing on her patterns of sinuous movement. The mind and the body, neither must move faster than the other. It is true, Pilot Akari. Your body is much slower than your mind. Sorry. Let's try again.
Oh, give me a break,
Asuka muttered.
Not from the beginning again. I can do this if I didn't have you messing up. Asuka, remember that the dance isn't your goal. When you pass the Evangelion test, then you can talk. Now get on that multiplayer.
Misato pointed with her unopened beer can. The second child was going to protest further, then for a moment saw what might have been a smirk on the first child's face. She snarled and put her feet back on the starting positions.
Evangelion Battle Simulation Mark 3, File 2, Session number 51. Ready to commence.
Everyone had gathered at the main tactical centre. Only it had a screen big enough, with a sound system powerful enough to be worthy of what they would see. Magi transferred sync data to the Evangelions, and from there back into itself, to create a virtual scenario using the JSSDF battle software.
All right. Remember, pilots,
Ritsuko spoke into the simulation plug audio link.
Don't hold back. I programmed in a feedback response, but not the pain of death. Treat the others as your enemy. I repeat, don't hold back. We need the data. This'll be easy,
said Asuka. Understood, said Rei, eyeing the purple Evangelion kneeling in the distance.
All right. Remember, the locations of weapon caches. For the purposes of this battle scenario, there is no operational power limit. The use of the AT field is to be limited to defensive purposes only, and as such will be the only thing draining the 5-minute power supply. Ready, everyone?
Misato looked back at the sea of eager faces. Isn't anyone taking bets against the carry? Someone whined. Maya switched on her announcement button.
Please know, everyone, that while the sync data is being sent from the Avas, that isn't Principio Eternus fighting in the sim. I personally programmed in the Evangelions to be perfectly equal in capabilities. So you're saying Shinji could still lose? Misato asked. It's anybody's fight right now.
And there was a frenzy of shouting and betting. Up on the command desk, Fuyutsuki chuckled. Gendo Ikari would never have allowed such laxity of professionalism from his people. However, this was sending morale straight through the roof. Ritsuko tapped her foot impatiently. Are we ready to begin? She asked after several minutes.
Hold on. 800 yen on Shinji. Both other Avas put down.
Misato whispered back to Makoto.
Okay. Everyone done? Everyone? Good!
She turned to the screen.
Evangelions! Fight!
Unit 2 sprang into action, with Asuka yelling over the comm. She made a straight beeline towards the purple Evangelion, still there, half kneeling. Hand to hand was good enough. She stopped in front of it and had her Ava make slow, flowing movements of its hands and arms. Unit 1 punched it in the head. The red Evangelion collapsed. On the ground, Asuka groaned out, "What the fuck?" "Misato," Ritsuko said over the channel. "Tai Chi might increase your sync ratio, but you do still need to move as fast or faster than he does." A bright lance of energy smashed against an AT field. Unit 1 took several leaps back as it SB'd Unit 0 approaching from over the ridge. It had 2 positron rifles, one being wielded while the other was slung on a strap over its shoulders. "Ducker," said Ray softly, as she pulled on the trigger again. Unit 1 began to run, looking for a bigger gun. Asuka made the decision to charge at Ray, and got a face full of virtual packed positrons. She too then decided a weapon was called for. The simulated fighting area was along the outskirts of Tokyo 3. Heavy cargo trucks and armory buildings were already placed along the hills and dips in the terrain. Power stations were set to recharge the Ava's main battery after overusing its AT field. Unit 0 walked slowly, stalking the others. They used cover well. Ray barely had any warning, as Unit 2 leapt off from behind a hill, its prog spear held up high over its head. She fired, but the positron couldn't beat an Ava's sheer momentum. She stepped back as it cleaved down, and her rifle broke apart as she used it to slightly slow the slice. Smoothly, Asuka reversed her grip and swung up, the tip of her spear catching the pale blue Ava by the jaw. It staggered back, but the damage was very slight. It ran up another hill to gain the advantage. There, Unit 2 unslung the spare rifle. Asuka knew enough never to make an uphill charge against someone armed with ranged weaponry. She circled round, her AT field handling the shots. There, at the softer side of the hill, she began her attack. On top of the hill, Unit 0 threw away its rifle and deployed 2 prog daggers.
"You can't be serious,"
Asuka said, nearly laughing.
"Those little things against my spear? You don't know anything about battle, do you?"
She felt a weight slam onto her back. Unit 1 leapt off the shoulders of her Ava, roaring mightily. Its chain sword screamed in the air. Its bolter spat a deadly cluster of ludicrously large caliber shells. Ray deployed her AT field and threw the prog daggers, guiding one to pass between the incoming bolter rounds, and at the bolter itself. The gun was cut into 2, and Unit 1 simply opened its hand to let it drop. It switched to a 2-handed hold for its chainsword. The other struck at its shoulder armour, leaving a tolerable scratch. Unit 2 slammed face down into the ground. Asuka managed to look up, only to see Unit 0 dive off its perch as the chainsword bit savagely into the hilltop. Unit 1 roared again and leapt following it.
"What the hell was that?"
Asuka screamed out.
"This is a simulation, Soyu-san,"
Mai responded a little too sweetly.
"Even those weapons still at the design stage may be used here. We did ask you what weapons you wanted to use." "A chainsaw? What kind of maniac fights with a chainsaw?"
"Chainsword," corrected Maya.
"Progressivists should do against angels that tried armour. Fleshy targets are just objects of pity."
Explosions happened beyond Asuka's view. She heard 2 roars, and then a hill just crumbled into pieces as 2 AT fields smashed into each other. She grit her teeth and ordered her Ava back to its feet. She took up her prog spear again and set off running towards the fray. She stood above a small valley and saw Unit 0 retreating again. Unit 1 stood there, merely watching it leave.
"Hey, Shinji!"
she shouted down.
"I'm your opponent now!"
"So be it, Asuka," he said, his tone lacking his usual restraint. He actually sounded happy. She snorted.
"Here goes!"
She held her spear out to stab and charged down the slope, yelling her spirit out. Unit 1 lightly skipped aside from her piking attack.
"Don't take things so easy, fool!"
she shouted out.
"Any thrust can become a slash in an instant!"
Pulling down with her left and using her right hand, farther away from her Ava's body, as the fulcrum, she cut at the purple Ava's suddenly exposed side. Sparks flew as large solid prog blade met hundreds of tiny moving prog shards. Asuka fought to keep her spear in her hands, as each saw bit nudged it up just a little more. Unit 1 grabbed the shaft with its red hand and pulled. Asuka grinned.
What do you think you can do?
She asked. Unit 1 and 2 were equal in strength. He couldn't pull her off her feet. The purple Ava pushed the spear aside and swung with its chainsword. The shaft was just normal metal, and it easily snapped under the rushing blades. Asuka took a step forward and jabbed at the enemy Ava's neck with her suddenly lighter weapon. She prodded at several points, unbalancing it.
Leverage!
She shouted as it fell on its metal-clad butt. She spun her staff around, completely comfortable with its use.
You better take me seriously first, child. I won't let you act as if you're the only one that can fight.
He laughed through the link. I already knew you could fight, Siryu-san. Shinji then went serious. But you know how to win?
Tah! A neophyte like you can never beat me.
Maybe. But you forget, you're not the only one with years of experience inside an Evangelion. Unit 2's weapon fell out of its hands as it felt a great force from behind nearly toppling it off its feet. It came as a stream of pain, slamming in between Asuka's shoulder blades. Rei had returned with an Ava-sized heavy bolter. Unit 2 turned and tried to charge, only to be pushed into the ground by the slap of fully automatic massive caliber fire. Her armour began to crack from the strain. She screamed,
You cheaters! You damn cheaters! How dare you gang up on me! You knew you couldn't win on your own!
You were the one so insistent on fighting with a melee weapon, as if this was a duel. Shinji said sadly. To win means to use every weapon at your disposal. If you're my enemy, then I don't care how you die. Rei switched her custom cannon from bolter to positron shooter. It burrowed through the weakened head armour and into the Red Ava's simulated brain. Evangelion Unit 2. Defeated. Hello, Rei, said Shinji. Hello, Pilot Ikari, she replied. Shall we fight then? Here we go. Evangelion Unit 1 roared. It rushed forward, leaping with impossible agility from side to side as it tried to evade fire. Its AT field went active, deflecting shots and trying to neutralise that of the other Ava. Evangelion Unit 0 flicked a switch on its rifle and out popped a large prog bayonet. Sparks flew and flashes lit up the scene as the two Avas fought with all savagery and without restraint. Blades, hands, feet, big rocks, everything was a weapon. Neither could gain any decisive advantage. Points began to accumulate rapidly. Even those watching became silent in their encouragements as they stared at the screen. Unit 1 parried a thrust to the face, only to remember too late there was a gun barrel behind that glowing red blade. A positron beam nearly took its head off had it not dodged at the very last moment. A deep gash carved into the left half of its face. The bayonet swung down towards the hand holding the chainsword. Unit 1 kicked at Unit 0's abdomen. Both their weapons fell out of their hands. Ah! Both pilots screamed at each other as they grappled. Both were matched in strength. Both were unyielding. Both ended up just headbutting each other over and over. It would boil down to who had the higher tolerance for pain. Unit 1 reared back for another head smash, only instead of meeting it, Unit 0 caught it upside down the head with a two-fisted down strike. The purple Ava was the victim of its own momentum as it slammed face first into the ground. Boom! Unit 0 lifted its right leg and stomp! Unit 0 then began jumping on its head. Stomp! 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 Enraged, Unit 1 lifted its head and roared. Unit 0 kicked at it like it was a football. There was an audible crack. The purple Ava slumped to the ground. Rapid, rationality-busting self-healing wasn't programmed in. Evangelion Unit 1. Defeated. Unit 0, unlike the other Avas, had its mouth sealed and thus couldn't roar. It let out instead a loud gurgle from within its metal mask. Evangelion Unit 0. Winner. Misato twitched.
So, Shinji's vulnerable to his own method of combat?
Screams of anguish echoed off the command centre. A bright happy squeal broke and rose from it.
I won!
Maya shouted out joyfully, shaking in glee.
3 months' pay! 3 months' pay!
She grabbed the nearest person, who just happened to be Ritsuko, and kissed her. The two broke apart, stared at each other in shock. Then Maya shrugged, as if to say, "What the hell?" and kissed her again.
"I won! Take that, you losers!"
Nobody else really had much confidence in Ayanami. She let out a loud, 5,000 yen if you kiss Katsuragi! Someone yelled.
"Done!"
Maya went over and gave her other senpai the tongue.
"Now gimme! I shall fall before the might of capitalist and Binky!"
10,000 yen if you kiss me!
"Go fuck yourself!"
She shouted back, still happy beyond her mind, and continued to make it the dance of capitalist superiority. After a while, Ritsuko coughed and went over to the console. Well, this should be enough. Ray, do you think you can handle 2 Evangelions at once? Of course, she responded, her flat tone somehow managing to convey indignation. Good. Now, Akari and Soryu, you will undergo synchro training until you can defeat Ayanami using 2 or more Evangelions programmed with full angel abilities. Remember, this is not a game. Fight to win, not to claim whatever glory for yourself. Yes, Akagi-sensei.
Damn it, damn it, damn it!
Asuka slammed her fist down at her plug controls.
This shouldn't be happening!
Asuka, your sync ratio is dropping. Are you thinking of unnecessary things?
No!
The girl took a deep breath and centered herself. Even if the memory was already several days old, it still burned her. To be defeated by Shinji was one thing, but that doll, that useless doll, the one who'd never had any kill to her name, the one most useful as just a sacrificial shield. She couldn't bear it. She blinked repeatedly as the sync testing plug opened up. No, she was strong. She just had to endure until she could finally show how vastly she could surpass them all. Ritsuko had her back turned away to the computer. However, she could guess at Asuka's mental state. Well, this is good news for you. You still have the highest sync ratio of the pilots, and now it's actually in the mid-80s. Asuka didn't respond. Is something wrong?
Kanji told me that Baka Shinji had an average of 100%,
she said in a low tone. Ritsuko sighed. In a way, that's true. In a different way, the normal way of looking at things, Kaji-kun's lying out of his ass again. Asuka looked up, filled with sudden hope.
What do you mean?
Well, that is his average. Remember that he was in actual combat for only 4 times. In a synchrograph test, his scores are just pathetic. The most is 66%. In an Evangelion, however, it fluctuates wildly. It can reach higher than 100 and then go below 40s. Unlike you, Shinji's just incapable of holding a sync ratio.
How is that possible? Does that affect how he fights?
Well, I'm sure you know the sync ratio is directly related to feedback. The higher it is, the more pain you feel, but the faster the Ava responds and the greater the potency of the AT field.
Do you know what's causing it, Dr. Akagi?
The scientist winced. He just explains it all away as opening himself up to the will of the machine spirit. The testing equipment just doesn't have one.
That sounds scientific. Everything has a cause and effect.
Indeed. The weirdness he pulls with the AT field makes little sense even to him, so it's up to us to find the underlying reasons within them. Obviously, if it can be done, we may be able to replicate it in another Ava. They both blinked, as they belatedly realized what each other had said. They turned to each other, and smiled hesitantly. Finally, someone else that makes sense. Perhaps it wouldn't be too bad working in Tokyo 3. 4 days had passed. Misato slept on the floor between their futons as a guarantee nothing would happen. It didn't help, as she could actually be far more distracted than Asuka could ever be. She snored. Shinji opened his eyes and yawned. Synchro training aside, he was still the first one up every morning. He had to prepare breakfast. It was the only time of the day they couldn't order for takeout if Asuka didn't feel like helping with the cooking. Very quickly did the girl learn never to trust what Misato called an interesting new taste. The first thing he did every morning was take a short soak in the bath, to wake up every part of his body. Unsurprisingly, Pen was already there. It seemed that in all the bustle going on, and being unable to leave, he was synchronizing with the pilots as well. You wouldn't happen to have an Evangelion of your own you're hiding somewhere, would you? Shinji asked the penguin. Ah! Didn't think so. The penguin got out of the bath and took his small towel, leaving him alone to relax and prepare for the rest of the day. He was humming as he went out, already dressed in his normal clothes. He put rice in the rice cooker and chopped up some garlic and spring onions to mix with the eggs. He stirred omelette into a hot pan and worked on Misato's morning miso. When it was all done, he let out a "Gah!" as he turned around and nearly dropped the food in surprise. Asuka was already there, seated feet up on the chair, staring at him with a narrow expression. He put the food on the table and sat down himself. Good morning, Asuka," he greeted weakly. "Didn't think you'd be up so soon."
What? You think you're the only one capable of rising early?
Asuka looked aside.
I don't get you. How can you be so servile? Don't you have any self-respect?
Shinji did most of the chores, and by extension of their training, she had to do them as well. She saw how he was stuck with sudden urges to clean and set things to order, and a natural focus on neatness was a sign of mental disorder to her. Of course, the college graduate in her also noted, one may also consider sheer laziness to be a mental disorder in itself. He shrugged. "I don't think I'd be able to respect myself if I couldn't help," was his response. "When those I care for are happy, then I'm happy too."
That's a kind of slavish reaction I just don't understand. You and Ray, you're just tools. How can you live like that?
It irritated her, seeing his obvious amusement at her words. "We don't need much more than that."
You piss me off, you know that?
He laughed weakly again, rubbing the back of his head in the typical embarrassed reaction. She scowled.
The great Shinji-sama! You're going to make someone a fine wife someday.
I have been told that. Yes. Asuka hugged her knees.
You know what I think? It's gotta be a cover somehow. You've got some deep, dark secret you don't want anybody else to know.
He stopped and quirked his lips. "Oh, come on now, Soryu-san." Asuka brought her hand up and put something on the table.
What's this then?
Shinji stared at it with a mix of fear and relief. Right. So is there really a deep, dark secret? Asuka smirked.
What? Were you trying to hide this from me, fair child? Aren't you ashamed to be still so attached to your toys?
Maya still has a few teddy bears.
Basing your defense around the actions of a girl isn't helping your case any, Shinji.
Technically, Ibuki-san would count as a young woman, but I see your point. He winced as he saw Asuka fiddling about with the farseer. Please be careful, Asuka. It's kind of valuable. For some reason, hearing that made her twitch.
How valuable?
It's the last of its kind. More than Misato-san makes in a month, I think. It would be a lot more if people actually had any idea what the heck it was supposed to be. Asuka stared at the strangely disapproving face. It was recognisably female, and it was for that reason she picked it up. But she had a feeling it was still dangerous and respected, in whatever world the toy was supposed to be from.
I don't get you,
she said again to him. It's all right, Asuka. I'm not that complicated, really.
I don't get you. You haven't spent years as I have. You didn't study for it. You didn't practice for it. I had the best tools. I had the best teachers. I prepared for it. I was supposed to be the best.
She gripped the figurine tightly, still refusing to look up at him.
Defeating the angels was supposed to be my duty. How? I don't get it. How can a wussy, pathetic little boy like you just walk in and take it away?
Asuka.
You and Ray, you're pathetic. But...
She slammed her forearms down at the table, sending the plates clattering.
How is it? Where are you getting that strength? Did you earn it the way I have, with hours and hours inside a sink tank? How can you do this? How can you do this to me?
She looked up and she was crying. She was way past being ashamed of showing any weakness. He was still sitting there, so calm and unmoving. She expected to see pity or disdain, but found neither. only acceptance. And that was what made it all so spiteful.
What's the point in sending for me if you're just going to laugh at me? Is this all I'm good for?
She grit her teeth.
Damn it! Why am I so weak?
Asuka! Shinji looked in pain himself. No one's laughing. She's so alone, like he was and Ray as well, each isolated in their own way. He's never seen such despair before. She's burning away from the inside. Oh, Asuka. You're not weak at all. Nobody thinks that.
I don't believe you! Maybe I should take away something of yours then! Make it even!
She spat. She put her open palm over the head of the farseer.
This goddamn town! It's taken too much from me already!
You won't do that, Soyu-san.
Watch me!
Asuka put her fist up high to smash the figurine. Because I don't believe you're a bad person. Slam! Her fist just barely missed the farseer. Her tears dripped down to it. I believe you're just feeling lost. Please, Asuka, you're not alone. No one thinks badly of you. It doesn't matter who's best or not. If you need to be, then you will be. I really believe you have that strength. Shinji's voice was sincere. He feared Asuka for what she could do to herself. He feared for what she was losing, something grand that also deserved expression. No one can take away your strength. Only you can give it to help others. We need you, Asuka.
Damn it! Damn you all!
She stood away from the table and hugged herself.
Why am I so unnecessary?
Asuka.
I'm not you! I can't be you! I'm not that doll either! I tried. Oh, Mother, I tried! But why is it always not good enough?
She bit her lower lip, enough to let it bleed.
No, nobody wants me. I'm not good enough.
What should I do? Shinji mentally shouted to the figurine on the table. Asuka, she's in such pain, such suffering. I can't bear it. I need her. I need to help her. My farsight is useless, young king. Do as your heart demands. Shinji walked over, put his hands on Asuka's shoulders, and kissed her. It wasn't intruding, just the surface of their lips, lasting barely more than a second. Her blood stained his mouth. Asuka pushed away, and saw he was just as shocked, as struck with the unexpected as she was. She slapped him anyway. You! Oh, God, I'm sorry, Asuka. He licked his lips. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't... It was the first true kiss for the both of them.
How dare you! Don't look at me!
She reached up to ripe her lips, then instead just put her palm up to her face. She screamed out silently, then,
No! I hate you! I don't need you! I don't need your help! I don't need you to care all about me!
But, Asuka, please, you don't need to try and bear it all alone. I care for you anyway.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
She put her palms over her ears and glared at him, her eyes reddish with even more tears. She was breaking down completely. Shinji and Asuka, neither could predict each other at all.
Don't talk to me! Don't touch me!
I've gone and shoved it all to hell, Shinji thought. I'm sorry.
Shut up!
Asuka turned and went for the door.
I can't take the sight of you. You make me sick, third child. I'm not going to be one of your toys.
Asuka!
No! I don't care! I hate you! Don't try to stop me!
It's still dark out. Could you at least put on some proper clothes? Her fingers left the door latch. She stomped back and spat into his face.
Hate!
She said. Asuka went into her room and dressed warmly. Back to the door.
I hate you beyond anything I could possibly hate!
She slammed the door shut as she left. Shinji wiped his face and sat back at the table, emotionally drained himself. Pen emerged from his refrigerator to give him a reassuring "Argh!" and a friendly pat with a flipper. The penguin got up to the table and took the entire plate of omelette to eat out on the veranda. Misato couldn't be roused even by all that commotion. Asuka ran on, heedless of where she was going. She felt bad, but her despair and nigh suicidal depression at her constant failure was replaced with such burning rage. Hatred. him and herself. For a brief moment she really had considered, such a boy, how could he help her? He could barely even help himself. He had nothing special, but everyone bowed to him anyway. She couldn't understand it. He didn't look in any way that formidable. But it would have been so easy. She believed for a moment that he could protect her. Such a weak-looking boy. As if he could and would move mountains just for her. The source of all her pain. Could he take it away? It made no sense! She made her way to a nearby park and sat on a bench there. The chill dawn air dried her tears, and in its cold numbness she felt her own pain also receding. Asuka closed her eyes. She didn't want to owe anything to anyone. No, she wouldn't be anyone's doll.
Hate him,
she said to herself.
I hate him! I hate him! I need to hate him!
She shivered, and not due to the cold. She felt herself breaking down again.
Hate!
She said again. She felt a change in pressure as someone sat on the wooden bench beside her. Hate is a powerful emotion, said that someone. A beautiful young woman as yourself isn't made for such feelings.
Buzz off, creep!
She snarled out, her eyes still closed.
Do you have any idea who I am?
Not really, no, was the reply. Should it matter? You look like you need someone to talk to. I'll listen.
I'm not here to entertain you. Go away!
A long stretch of silence. Did you know it is impossible to hate someone too much? The unknown voice said after a while. If you continue on it, to accept it so thoroughly into your being, you begin to cherish that hate, cherish him. You would hate him, and in this way also hate yourself, and you would have it no other way. You would understand him, and yourself, and all so completely, and it would all become something utterly new. It would be an emotion so black and pure and yearning, and hate itself would be so small a word to describe what it could be. Slowly, very slowly, Asuka opened her eyes. Humans strive so much and never really understand themselves, so they search out examples from others, and where there isn't make-up, those they could use as their templates. Gods, heroes, but all of it just an excuse, because humans seek the perfect knowing, to cherish that understanding, to grok, to hate beyond hate, and love beyond love. Humans struggle, they falter, they fail. But it's all right. Asuka turned and saw him there, clad in the sunrise. His hair was pale grey, his eyes a pale brown, his skin pale as well. Everything about him was so pale and unreal, and he was so breathtakingly handsome. No, even beautiful, to her. Her own heart seemed to stop. Eventually, they find it. After all, Kaoru smiled at her. It's for the greater good.